Well, hello there, and welcome to a great conversation that you're about to hear with David Rothkopf of Deep State Radio and The Daily Beast. I hope that you are doing okay, having a good morning, day, time, whenever you are listening to this. I am on my way to Las Vegas for PodJam this week. Really excited to see you, hopefully, if you're going to be there. And if not, I hope that you will come next time, or maybe you just want to enjoy the podcast. Either way, I'm so happy that you're here and part of my life and our journey of learning and living together as we try to figure out what the hell is happening in this world, and that we try to stay on Earth One here together. One of the people who has helped us do that for the past couple of years now is today's guest, David Rothkopf. So I'm going to get right to it. Of course, I've got to ask that you subscribe to the podcast because it can't happen without your support. It is totally subscriber supported. No commercials here. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. David Rothkopf joins me every other week or so on the show. I always love when he does. I love our conversations. I learn so much from his point of view, his perspective, and his experience because he's been covering politics, foreign policy, domestic policy for years, both in and out of government. He seems to pretty much know everybody. And of course, he's the CEO of the Rothkopf Group, which is a media company that produces podcasts, including Deep State Radio, which he hosts. Go check it out right now. Get his books, read his articles, and of course, follow him on Twitter where he is prolific. Let's do it right now with Rothkopf. All right, our Royals correspondent, David Rothkopf, joins us. You've just been promoted.
Thank you. I'm glad for any progress I can make in my career at this point.
Are you paying attention to that? Where's Kate?
Only slightly peripherally, just as I try to pay attention to all things.
Also, there's conspiracies about why Barack Obama was there. Is he involved in this?
He's dating Kate Middleton. Nobody knows. She is a thing for tan suits.
Oh, that's really a real scandalous scenario that is unfolding right before. I can't believe nobody's talking about it. Or else, I guess they are everywhere because you can come up with...
Well, it's a real twist considering how Prince William's family was uncomfortable with Meghan Markle given her racial background.
Right. Well, maybe that's why she did it. Maybe that's what she was trying to do.
Exactly. Send a message.
I feel like we're doing like part of the reality show commentary on this situation that we're seeing unfold. And now I've learned too much already about this situation. Let's get to far more important issues, which of course you've been writing about. Let's start with something else positive, and I think that's where we're at today. I say carpe diem. If you want to feel good, today would be a day to feel good. Biden coming out of that State of the Union, you like that, and there's some certain signals. I feel like there's momentum. What do you think?
There's plenty of momentum. The daffodils are in bloom. The forsythia is out. It is springtime. We're into daylight savings time. These are all really good things. And historically, things get better from here. Biden's speech was excellent. His energy level was high, but, the way he engaged with the audience, as he did the prior year, I think worked to his advantage. And it's interesting. I mean, think back. The day before the speech, most of the stories were, is Biden too old? And since the speech, that has not been the story. And that's not to say it's going to go away because he's, 82 years old. But he really came as close to sticking a stake through the heart of it as he possibly could. That's quite an achievement for a speech like that.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I think there's not much more to add to that except for what we're seeing in terms of metrics. We don't pay attention to the polling on it, but he's seemingly getting some good headlines. How is the campaign doing? Do you think they've been effective so far?
I love what you just said. We're not paying attention to the polling because we know that's what we're supposed to say. And of course, everybody is paying attention to every poll. And they're like, well, this poll doesn't matter and that doesn't matter. And I could think, but, we keep an eye on these things and fixate on them a little too much, perhaps. But discounting them altogether is also kind of goofy.
But at the same time, it's still a long way out. We take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
but I'm just adding it as a data point from the State of the Union to, the horrible, I don't know how much it matters, this testimony of the guy who investigated, the special counsel investigated Biden's classified documents, and the fact that his case against Biden kind of crumbled in terms of the poll quotes about his age and so on. I don't know how much that mattered, but it would seem like there's...
Well, he got blown up too, I mean,
right.
A lot of that story has been unraveled. Now, the president could have an incident or get sick and somebody's going to try to bring it up again. But here's the reality. He's a very effective president. He's very good on his feet. We're in a presidential campaign where most of the vision of the campaign, the visibility people have, are going to be via social media, right, which means they're going to be short clips, of him interacting with people, which he's really, really good at. And also the VP is hitting on all cylinders right now, and she's doing extremely well. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is having a complete meltdown. His brain is a diseased soup, and he can barely utter a complete sentence. And so I think a lot of the story of, is this person up to the job, is shifted, as it should, to Trump.
As far as the Biden-Harris campaign strategy, you probably know about it. You're an insider. I'm just over here in a shed. And so I don't, but I see what I see, and I see that the vice president, who you know, because you're an insider, she was at an abortion clinic the other day. I thought that was a really good idea, and I think that they should go to all the abortion clinics, like abortion clinic Tuesday and Thursday and whatever, because that seems to be, in my mind, one of the most important issues to be highlighting what could be and what certainly is. What do you think of that strategy so far?
No, I think I thought it was great. I thought it was bold. I thought it was overdue to have somebody that senior go and do that. While she was there, she was terrific. She spoke to crucial issues that are involved in women's health. We reframed it, I think, as providing health care to women, providing fundamental right to women, reclaiming it. The Republicans trying to take it away. But, she did something else, and it's something that actually happened a couple of years ago, and we're already taking it for granted. She was a woman leader. It was a woman talking about this stuff,
right?
And she's gone through all sorts of misogynistic commentary on his vice presidency or whatever. But after, 250 years of American history, to have the majority population, have one of the top two national officials, one of them, to address these issues as only a woman can do it, that's a big deal. It's every bit as big a deal as where she chose to do it. Final point I'd make, her going to the abortion clinic, like Biden walking in a picket line, are sort of indelible images that break with past tradition and show how different and bold and connected to the people and connected to the issues they care about these two people are. I think both of them were masterstrokes.
Yeah, very good points. Now, she is visiting, the vice president, Kamala Harris, is visiting an abortion clinic, and Donald Trump seems to be visiting, as his campaign, courtrooms. And my question is, it seems like the Trump campaign, I listened to your conversation over at Deep State Radio with Simon Rosenberg and Tara? Is it Tara?
Tara McGowan.
Yeah, very smart conversation. And it made me think about their campaign, the Trump campaign. Laura Trump is now running the RNC with no experience. And I wonder how important it is for him to have a traditional organized campaign that is doing get out the vote everywhere they need to and distributing funds the way they need to for him to win, because it's just this cult now. And so I wonder how, even though it looks like his campaign is in disarray and he might not have any money for it, does he need it? Does this a traditional presidential election?
Well, let me answer that on two levels. One, yeah, he needs it because his cult's going to show up and vote for him, but that's not going to win the election. It's just not enough people. He needs independents. He needs people who are on the fence. He needs some of the people that pushed him across the finish line the first time around, particularly in these swing states. That takes a get out the vote, grassroots effort. That takes money. And the Republicans are having problems with money. Small donors are not signing up in the way that they have in the past. Large donors are not re-upping in the way that they have in the past. And a lot of the money is being channeled off into his legal cases, to which you referred earlier. Having Laura Trump as the sort of co-head of the RNC and sort of completing this takeover of the RNC so that it's all about Trump all the time has another negative effect, though, for the Republicans. And that is everybody else in the Republican Party. All the down ballot candidates who were counting on the RNC community programs to help promote them. Well, they got rid of all those community pro people, all those people who are down ballot who want some of the money to go to them and their campaigns. They're not going to get it because Trump has an insatiable appetite for money because all these various lawsuits, and we don't know, by the way, what additional lawsuits will be filed between now and the campaign. They all cost money. So taking over the RNC may seem like a masterstroke to him. But if it alienates people down the ballot, if those people lose down the ballot, if he doesn't have that support down the ballot, that's also going to translate into fewer votes for him. And particularly in those battleground states, that's going to be a problem.
I don't wonder if he cares about anything. I wonder if he thinks at all about whether it matters if he did win, if he had control of the House or Senate, because I think his only concern is to dismiss these court cases, which he doesn't need the House or Senate. Meaning, my point being, all the money that comes in to Lara Trump should be funneled, 100% of it, to the Trump for President campaign, which goes right to his pockets, and he can do whatever the hell he wants with it, including paying his legal fees, and just despite and screw all of the rest of the Republicans, the Senate races, and all the rest of the RNC normally traditionally funds and organizes.
Well, he's had some experience with Congresses that are not controlled by Republicans, and he knows that if the House and the Senate are controlled by Democrats, he could face a tough time getting people appointed. He could face impeachments. He could face investigations.
What does he care? He's president. That's the point.
Well, he may think that way.
That's what I'm saying, and he wants to stay out of jail.
And I believe that on some monomaniacal level, he's just, oh my God, I can't have happened to me what happened to Peter Navarro moments before we started recording this, which is that he, went into jail.
Amazing.
But and he thinks that that's the way to avoid it. Well, first of all, it doesn't help him with the state cases. And secondly, if the House is Democrats and the Senate is Democrats, he can have other kinds of problems. And even a stacked Supreme Court is not going to help him out of that. So, or it may not help him out of that. So I think would be very foolish and short-sighted for him not to focus on the down the ballots. And by the way, they did another thing. They said, we don't want anybody in the party who's not MAGA. Everybody else, we don't want their votes. Can you imagine running for this office where these races are so close and saying, no, we don't need your vote. We don't need the vote of this. It's insane.
I feel like that wasn't a strategy as much as just a comment that he is making.
He doesn't have any strategies. All he does is have comments. He says crazy things all the time. And frankly, he stays in the news not because of the substance of what he says so much as the craziness of what he says.
Yes, he said he didn't consider the people coming into the country across the border. He didn't consider them people.
Yeah, well, that's, more of that Nazi propaganda. I personally was, of course, extremely persuaded when he said any Jew who votes for Biden is not, really a Jew and hates Israel. I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tiki Torch. Thank you, Mr. Hitler's not such a bad guy. Really, really helpful for you to be handing out advice to the Jews. That's who, we're definitely going to look up to you.
What does that do to, at the synagogue, at the conversation within the Jewish community and families? When you hear the president say, if you vote Democrat, you're not Jewish. It's obviously a really offensive thing for a non-Jewish person to say anything about like that, or a non-black person, or a man saying about women, you're not a whatever. It's just so weirdly stupid. But there are people that are Republican that are Jewish. What do they think?
Well, I think he thinks a couple of things. I think one thing he thinks is that his core base cares about Israel monomaniacally.
Right.
And when they say that, they mean the government in Israel, Netanyahu, which is essentially a MAGA government in Israel. And many of the people who feel that way are evangelicals. They're not Jews to begin with. Right. And I think he thinks, well, they'll support him because they think, they're one-issue voters, and they think he will be better for their vision of a right-wing Israel than Biden will be. I think that's part of his rationale. I think part of his rationale is that, he believes his own bullshit, and that, he thinks Americans are going to go and support him because he thinks he's actually been a successful political candidate, even though he has never won a popular election. Ever. So that's kind of crazy. And then finally, at the core of MAGA theory is racism.
Yes.
Right? It's white supremacy. It's either you're with us or you're against us.
There's a strong thread of that Christian nationalism. Not all of them are religious overtly, but a lot of them
A lot of them, and it's a very strong. Some of them are just work for the Kremlin, but some of them, big numbers of them believe in this whole Seven Mountains dominionist lunacy. Then we actually should have a Christian government that espouses Christian.
I think they make some strong arguments. I wouldn't support. I don't support all of the Seven Mountains agenda, but I think they do have some good points.
Okay, well, you're pro mountains, a semi-pro. You're a mountain centric. I don't know.
Yes,
but
men should be fully in charge.
Yeah, no, that's a great and progressive value that I would expect to come from a guy in a shack wearing a work shirt.
That's what. But, it's such an elitist thing to say about my work shirt. Yes. So the MAGA theory. Sorry.
No, it is about racism. It is about saying the people who come across the border are not people. It is about us and them. That's what ethno-nationalism is about in Russia, Hungary, Israel, Brazil, India.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it morphs. In India, Modi is a Hindu nationalist. And in Russia, Putin loves to be seen with the Eastern Orthodox, prelates. But in the United States, it's a combination of evangelical Christians and extreme right-wing Jews and white supremacists.
It feels very Sunni Shia to me. I don't know what that really is.
That's very funny you mentioned that. I once had a conversation with Tom Friedman of the New York Times, who's been a friend of mine for 30-odd years. And, of course, the first book he ever wrote that was a big book was From Beirut to Jerusalem. And he spent a lot of time in the Middle East. And this was 9 years ago, something like that, 16. We were talking about the Trump phenomenon. And he said, he comes from the Middle East. And one of the reasons he left the Middle East was the divide between Sunnis and Shiites had become so extreme, so difficult, that he didn't think it could be bridged. And he got home and he discovered that we had become a Sunni Shiite kind of nation, a nation with a fundamental religious philosophical divide, or something that purported to be that. Because, MAGA is not based on a religious philosophy or a lot of thought. It's based on racism and fear of the other.
Yeah, and it's not hard to go back to, I've been watching a lot of Civil War stuff and Confederate Union and what's become of that. But we went through World War II. We went through the Civil Rights Movement. We went through Vietnam. We went through the 80s. We went through all kinds of pop cultural transformations. We've gotten, there's been so much progress made, but of course, so much has been taken back, both legislatively and culturally, by the rise of Trump, that it kind of just puts us back to some extent in.
And it's not just the rise of Trump. This has been the through line for the Republican Party.
Rise of right-wing media, judges.
Yeah, for 40 years they've been trying to get these judges in place. And, that's how you ended up with a court that said, hey, voting rights, which we had passed some laws to deal with the racism in America, it's not an issue anymore.
Right.
And
until that day, it became an issue. They made a law.
Right. They just decided
taking
it wasn't
voting
an
rights
issue
the
anymore.
day they made the decision. Texas is like, oh, we'll take that. Thank you.
And so that's where we are right now. But it's, a human level, it's nauseating that there's so much support for that.
Right. Well, now it's time for a new segment I do only with you starting now, because I just came up with. It's called Third Party Watch. Third Party Watch. That's the sound effect.
Yeah.
And it's mainly about RFK, but also no labels can't seem to find a candidate. Thoughts on the threat of anybody else?
Well, the threat is huge because these elections have been close, and it was third-party candidates in 2016 that ultimately led, in states like Michigan, Hillary Clinton to lose. And even though she had a plurality of the votes nationally, and those candidates only got a couple or 3% of the vote.
She could have run a better campaign in Michigan too, though.
Pardon me?
She could have run a better campaign in Michigan.
Sure, absolutely. But the point is, when races are close, percentage points count.
Yeah.
And in that race, you had, some mediocre third-party candidates or lousy, crazy ones. And in this race, you're going to have a few. Some of them, like Cornel West, are definitely going to cut out of the Democratic base. Some of them, like RFK Jr., we don't know which way it's going to cut, but he could get 8% of the vote, 7% of the vote, because 7% of the people don't really realize he's not like his father. They like the fact that he's a complete lunatic.
That percentage of people could think he is his father, too. That small percentage of people believe a lot of crazy shit.
Exactly right. If you believe in Bigfoot, or you believe in injecting bleach into your veins, or you believe...
Or that was Kate Middleton outside that shop the other day. There was no way, Rothkopf. Yeah, if you believe any of that, then of course you could believe that.
No, I know you're a Kate Middleton conspiracy theorist.
I am.
But in any event, the reality is that these candidates can make a difference no matter who they are.
Right.
And they will make a difference. And, we've got a couple. Bill Clinton beat George H.W. Bush because of Ross Perot. And that was in our lifetime. And Hillary Clinton lost because of third-party candidates. You know who else won because of a third party or multiple party candidates? Abraham Lincoln.
Is that right?
Got 40% of the vote because the Democratic Party split into two parties. And there were Southern Democrats and Northern Democrats. And so he won with only 40% of the vote.
I think, did you say Teddy? Didn't Teddy do that? Wasn't he a spoiler?
Teddy also ran on the Bull Moose Party.
Bull Moose, that's right. I remember.
I've been seeing a lot of people saying, oh, yeah, vice president is not, like Pence spoke out against Trump, which is a big deal. And everybody's like, well, vice president never spoke out against his president that way before. Teddy Roosevelt ran against the guy.
Well, that's interesting. Almost every former cabinet member of Trump's has spoken out against him. That's the larger point. Like his former chiefs of staff, his former secretaries of state, et cetera, his former UN ambassador ran against him. I mean, everybody, and not that matters at all. So I'm not really sure. But what about, how come no labels can't get anybody? And every week it seems like another new hard-jawed white man that they're considering. But are they going to, I don't know.
They'll get somebody if they want to get somebody.
Okay.
And whether they're in it or not, RFK Jr. will be in it, and Cornel West will be in it, and these other people. And they should be forced, people have got to tune them out. People have got to take this seriously. And when a friend of yours says, I don't like Biden, I don't like Trump, so I'm going to vote for this other person, you got to go lock that person in a closet and tell them you're not going to let them out until they come to their senses.
Where is Mike? He's got a closet over there.
Until Mike was
smells terrible.
Mike is a closet third-party supporter. And we're giving him some reversion therapy.
We took his internet connection for a few days.
Exactly.
Lastly, got to ask you, of course, about the Middle East. You've been writing about it, talking about it, thinking about it as much as anyone, and doing such a great job helping us understand what's happening there. You had an excellent appearance last night on MSNBC with the great Lawrence O'Donnell and brilliant Peter Biner. How bad are things in Gaza?
Oh, they're really bad. I mean, first of all, Gaza's not there effectively, right? I mean, it's been destroyed. Sort of 2/3 of the urban area has been destroyed in Gaza. People are eating boiling weeds into making soup out of it. The death toll is up to 31,000. The injured are 60 or 70,000. So 100,000 people out of 2.2 million people are dead or injured as a consequence of this. 1 million are at jeopardy of famine. And, it's important to note that when you see groups say this is imminently going to be categorized as a famine, what that means is that people are already starving.
Right.
Right. People are already suffering. Children are suffering. They'll never get over this. They may live, but people who go through this kind of deprivation, they have health problems their whole lives, but they also have psychological problems their whole lives. And by the way, many of them become extremists as a consequence of being tortured this way.
Yeah, so you're killing more terrorists than you're creating has always been a question of any counterterrorist.
Right. And the U.S. conclusion always was if you kill a civilian, you create 10 terrorists. Right. And in this particular case, that means they are creating far more terrorists than they're killing. They're also creating global animosity. My friend Alon Pincus has an article just up now in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, in which he talks about, Netanyahu through his actions is cementing Israel's status as a pariah state. And, your own state senator is a pretty conservative person when it comes to taking steps like this. Chuck Schumer, stood up and made a speech.
How big of a deal is it? He's been an ally of Israel's.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal because it's essentially saying the worm is turning. It's essentially giving permission to a lot of people to do the right thing. Yes. And that is to say, look, you can be a supporter of Israel and oppose this government. This government is not Israel, does not speak for Israel, and is not acting in Israel's interests. And I think all those things are true. But just to go back to this other point, there was a call between Netanyahu and Biden just yesterday, but in terms of the day we're recording this. And it was a contentious call. And essentially Biden said, you can't go into Rafah where there are 1 million people. Right. And Netanyahu said, I don't agree with you. And they said, well, let's get our people together and talk about it. But even when Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, was saying this to the press, he also said, but Netanyahu has his own views on this. And so you sort of see going into Rafah with a big operation as a dividing line issue. But I have to tell you, everybody should be just as concerned about the famine. Everybody should be just as concerned about the fact that thousands and thousands of people could die and hundreds of thousands of people are already suffering, scavenging for food, paying 10, 20, 30 times what they would have paid for staple foods, buying water off of trucks or drinking water that's not clean. And, Israel, yes, Hamas is responsible for the triggering event. And yes, Hamas has impeded some people's access to these things. But at the end of the day, Israel controls the crossings into the country. Israel could make the famine go away if they prioritized this. And, there's an old saying among U.S. generals, which is, if you break it, you bought it. In other words, if you go in, you invade a country, you're then responsible for the people in that country. And right now, Israel is not acting that way. And this is it's just unimaginable.
The Israelis will say that they have to go through everything that goes in. There's certain things they can't have because they'll turn it into weapons, pipes.
They're not turning flour into weapons. They're not turning clean water into weapons. They're not turning most of these food products. There are plenty of ways that one can get around that kind of a concern. And, by the way, the Israelis want everybody to, avoid the UN agency that's responsible for providing these things because 12 people in that agency of 12,000, they allege were associated with Hamas.
Right.
And this is just not the time to do it. You got to realize if 1 million lives are at stake, you got to prioritize saving the lives.
Well, we'll see what the Biden administration does, but the worm is definitely seemingly turning, and it is turning. Who are the organizations that came out and criticized Schumer? The Jewish organizations that came out and criticized Schumer, were they many? Was it loud?
There were some, and there were some on the right that criticized Schumer. But the reality is, even those organizations realize this is different.
Yeah,
this is not like past crises.
Right.
The view of Israel is permanently changing. And I think, if it can go, pull back the camera just a step further, we talk a lot about Trump versus Biden and the political consequences of that as it pertains to those individuals. Here's the other thing this is. This is a generational watershed in American history. These are the last two guys of the baby boom or prior era that will ever run for president again. We are about to enter an era in which Gen X and millennials will play a much bigger role. And even Gen Z, of course, will start to play a bigger and bigger role. And the views of Gen X and millennials and Gen Z towards climate, towards women's rights, towards healthcare, and towards Israel are radically different from what we're used to in this country. And I think we need to defeat Trump so that we can continue to have elections. But the big picture is that this is a turning point politically in U.S. history. And, Kamala Harris is the first Gen X national level political leader that we had.
There it is. You got it in. Kamala Harris. I'll let you go. I just do want to correct you just because this news just broke that Buzz Aldrin announced he'd be running in 2028.
Yeah, well, that would be an interesting candidacy. He's one of the few people I can think of who's actually possibly crazier than Trump.
And I've met him. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated.
It's my pleasure.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much for listening today, and I will be back here tomorrow and every day with a new episode this week, even though I'm in Vegas. I've got some great conversations coming your way. So if you're here, I'm here. Just press play and write a review on the show. Whatever you do to help is very, very appreciated. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow, my friends. John Carroll taking us out.
Trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels in leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run there.